Ohio, Senator JD Vance has officially accepted the Republican vice presidential nomination. He gave a speech to the Republican National Convention for the first time as Donald Trump's running mate. In his address, Vance gave an account of his turbulent upbringing in rural Ohio. He also touched on trade, foreign policy, and spoke of the Republican Party as a big tent.
That's the Republican Party of the next 4 years, united in our love for this country and committed to free speech and the open exchange of ideas. And so tonight, Mr. Chairman, I stand here humbled, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to say I officially accept your nomination to be Vice President of the United States of America.
Well, Alan Fisher was at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee.
This was the night that the man picked by Donald Trump to be his vice presidential running mate introduced himself to the American public. JD Vance was raised in relative poverty in Ohio by a grandmother because of his mother's addiction. He went into the Marines and served in Iraq, and then went to Ohio State University and eventually Yale Law School, where he graduated. He is the best-selling author of the memoir The Hillbilly Elegy, and he talked about those roots in some detail. But he started by praising the man who selected him as vice presidential candidate, a man who in the past he has often derided. He said that the Republican Party was a broad tent for people with many ideas, and he said that the difficulties facing many of the American public was because of the people who govern in Washington, and it was his intention, along with Donald Trump, to change that. There was no mention of his controversial positions on things like aid to Ukraine or abortion or his position on China. Instead, this was him presenting a glowing face to the American public who outside political circles might not know a great deal about him. And from the box just over my shoulder, that's where Donald Trump watched, smiling and applauding so often. The attention now turns to Donald Trump himself, speaking to the convention for the first time since the assassination attempt, when he addresses everyone and formally accepts the nomination on Thursday evening. And we'll see if the talk about a different tone from Donald Trump actually comes true. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee.
Well, Peggy Grandee is a Republican delegate from California and a former executive assistant to former President Ronald Reagan. She's with us live now from Milwaukee. Welcome to the programme. So, JD Vance announced himself to a wider audience with a speech at the convention there. What do Republicans hope he will bring to the ticket?
That is the person that excites and energizes this crowd.
He did. It was such a pleasure to be here tonight, and wow, what a range of emotions and speakers, of course, culminating with JD Vance introducing himself not only to this audience in a way, but America and the world. I think that everybody in this room could relate to some part of his story. Most people in America weren't born into wealth, and many people can relate to the hard times, the poverty, the struggle that he went through in his early years. And yet he painted this beautiful picture of inspiration, of patriotism, of hope, of optimism, of overcoming in only a way that the all-American story can be told. He did that beautifully tonight. The crowd was on their feet multiple times as he spoke, and it really was an all-American success story that he would start in the hills of Appalachia and wind up here on the stage accepting the nomination as the future, hopefully, Vice President of the United States alongside Donald Trump.
Does this convention, though, reveal a real shift in the Republican Party when you consider that the noticeable absence, for example, of GOP grandees like the Bush family?
With his father, but again, the big test will come tomorrow.
Well, this is a party, it's now Donald Trump's party in many ways. And Donald Trump had said back when he first ran that this was the party, and he was going to include the forgotten men and women all over this great nation. And we saw that on display tonight. And for anybody who was in the room, it was quite the roller coaster almost of emotions. There was everything from University of North Carolina fraternity boys who had defended the flag to a 98-year-old World War II veteran who looked at President Trump and said, "I'd re-enlist if you would allow me to." He loves this country and was proud to serve it. We had parents who have a son who is still held hostage by Hamas and Gold Star families that the audience rose to their feet to cheer and to pay tribute to their loved ones who had been lost. And probably the star of the show tonight was Donald Trump's granddaughter, who's a teenager. And as she looked at her grandfather watching her give her first speech ever, you could see the pride in his eyes. And so this was not just an evening about JD Vance, although that was very important. It was a night about all of America and a very inclusive Republican Party that is no longer known as the party of the country club elites, but is known as the party of the forgotten men and women, the ordinary men and women who make up this great country, who have extraordinary stories.
Forgive me for interrupting you there. Forgive me for interrupting you there. But we understand the story that was being given there, as you mentioned. But JD Vance's speech, there was no mention of abortion issues, for example, or a position on China. Was there enough actual substance?
Well, I think there was quite a bit of substance tonight, and this is a first introduction to JD Vance. We're going to see and hear a lot more of him. He will be out on the road, starting with the campaign immediately. And so as soon as the convention wraps up, we will get to know a lot more about JD Vance and how he feels about things. Tonight, he was relatively an unknown to a lot of people, not only in this audience, but around the nation and the world. And so I think it was a great start for us to get to know who he is, what he cares about, what his vision for America is, and to meet his lovely wife as well. And so I think it was a great start. There certainly are hard questions to come. He will undoubtedly be prepared to answer those. He was a Yale Law School grad, is very articulate, and so we will hear more from him. But I think he was off to a great start tonight, introducing himself to the world.
In a general sense, then, do you think there has been any toning down of rhetoric since the attempt on Donald Trump's life?
Well, Donald Trump, actually, before there was even the assassination attempt, I think his rhetoric had changed a little bit. It was a little softer. It was a little more unifying. And we've seen over the last 3 days how determined he is to unify this party. He said this convention is going to be all about unity and love. And he has shown that. And not only by showing up, but it's when he has shown up. He has shown up to hear these stories from everyday Americans the first night, the second night, and again tonight. And so he's showing us that this is a party of unity. Last night, he had some of his biggest adversaries on the political stage speak. We had Nikki Haley, we had Vivek Ramaswamy, we had Ron DeSantis. They all spoke, and Donald Trump was here in the arena to listen to each one of them speak and give their endorsement to Donald Trump. So this is a party that is completely unified, and I look forward to seeing what we're going to do from here. We hope to get him across the line and elected in November, and look forward to making America a wonderful, prosperous, successful, safe, free place to live again, starting in January.
Okay, Peggy Grandee, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.